was a cold, dreary morning in early spring, the kind of morning that seemed to hold the promise of warmth just beneath the gray clouds, yet never quite fulfilled it. In a small, quiet town tucked away from the hustle and bustle of city life, Dr. Emma Calloway, a veterinarian with a reputation for her stern professionalism, was preparing for another day at the clinic. Her hands, calloused from years of tending to the countless creatures that had crossed her threshold, moved methodically as she organized her workspace. The clinic was modest, yet it held a warm, comforting energy. Wooden floors creaked beneath her boots, and the scent of antiseptic mixed with the earthy smell of animals filled the air. Dr. Calloway wasn't the most social person, preferring the company of animals over people, but she had built a reputation as one of the best in town. Her sharp mind and no-nonsense attitude made her a sought-after vet, but she carried an unspoken rule that had earned her a few enemies over the years. She was ruthless when it came to what she believed was right. If a pet was in a situation she deemed too risky, too complicated, or too financially draining, she didn't hesitate to refuse treatment. There was no room for sentimentality in her practice, only logic. That morning, the phone rang, breaking the peaceful stillness of the clinic. Dr. Calloway's eyes flicked to the screen as the receptionist's voice buzzed through the speaker. "Dr. Calloway, we have a walk-in. A woman and a dog says she needs help urgently. The dog's pregnant." Dr. Calloway sighed, rolling her eyes. Another pregnancy. She had seen countless cases, some of them heartbreaking, and others simply inconvenient. She had no patience for what she considered unnecessary drama. After all, there were many other animals that needed care, and this dog was no different. "Tell her we're fully booked for the day," Emma replied curtly, setting down her stethoscope and organizing the file she was working on. "If it's just a routine checkup, she'll have to come back another time." But before the receptionist could respond, there was a soft knock on the door, and a woman with a gentle face and tired eyes stepped in, holding the leash of a dog by her side. The dog was a beautiful golden retriever, but there was something about her that struck Emma as different. The dog's eyes, soft and brown, held a kind of wisdom that only a few animals ever seemed to possess. She had a slightly rounded belly, unmistakable signs of pregnancy, but she didn't seem to be in distress. However, Emma's eyes immediately narrowed, her instinct telling her that something wasn't quite right. The woman, barely in her mid-30s, stood nervously at the door, her gaze flickering from the floor to Emma. She was clearly holding something back, but Emma didn't have the time or the patience to address it. "I'm sorry, Dr. Calloway," the woman said, voice soft and anxious. "I know you're busy, but I need help. I adopted this dog just a few days ago, and well, I'm afraid she's going into labor soon. I don't know what to do." Emma studied the woman for a long moment before glancing down at the dog, who stood calmly, her tail gently wagging. She certainly didn't appear to be in any immediate danger. But Emma was still cautious. "Is this dog up to date on her vaccinations?" Emma asked briskly, but her tone remained clipped. "Has she seen a vet before? If not, I'm afraid you'll have to find another clinic. We can't squeeze in new cases at the last minute." The woman hesitated, and there was a brief flicker of something guilt, perhaps, in her eyes. She shook her head. "No, she hasn't had her vaccinations yet, but she's been doing fine, and I promise I'm trying my best. I don't know what to do next. She's been acting strange lately, and I'm really scared for her." "Please," Emma frowned, her mind working through the calculations. There were many possible reasons why the dog might be acting strange: pregnancy hormones, stress, or even the beginning of complications. But whatever the cause, Emma knew this was likely going to be a long, drawn-out process. "Look, I understand the attachment people have to their pets," Emma said, voice softening slightly, but still firm. "But I can't afford to take in cases like this without proper paperwork and history. You'll have to go to a shelter or a low-cost clinic for a checkup. We're not equipped for unexpected cases like this." The woman's eyes filled with tears, and her hands began to tremble as she clutched the dog's leash. She knelt down to stroke the golden retriever's fur, her voice barely a whisper. I can't go to a shelter. I just adopted her a few days ago. I know it was impulsive, but she needed help, and now she's pregnant, and I don't know what to do. I don't want anything bad to happen to her or her puppies." Emma's eyes softened just a fraction, but her resolve remained firm. She couldn't let sentiment rule her decisions. There were too many other cases waiting for her attention. The clinic wasn't a charity, and Emma had a rule she followed religiously. If an animal was too much of a financial burden or had complications that seemed too high risk, it wasn't her problem. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice colder now, "but there's nothing I can do for you here. You should try a different clinic. Maybe someone will take you in." The woman's face fell, and she slowly stood up, turning to leave. But just as she reached the door, the dog gave a soft, whimpering bark, and Emma froze. It wasn't just a bark. It was a cry, a plea for help, and it struck her deep in her chest. Emma knew that dogs had an innate ability to understand humans in ways we couldn't begin to comprehend, and this dog seemed to be reaching out to her, her eyes full of silent words Emma couldn't ignore. Before she could stop herself, Emma stood up from behind the desk, her voice suddenly softer. "Wait." The woman turned, surprised, her face lighting up with hope. You'll help?" Emma exhaled sharply, rubbing the back of her neck. "I'll take a quick look at her," she muttered, trying to sound indifferent, though the weight of the dog's eyes had begun to pull at her heartstrings in a way she hadn't expected. She gestured for the woman to follow her, and they walked toward the examination room. Emma had no intention of offering long-term care, but she felt a nagging sense of responsibility to at least make sure the dog wasn't in immediate danger. The golden retriever, despite her size and her heavy belly, was remarkably gentle as she jumped up onto the examination table. Emma began the routine checks, listening to the dog's heartbeat, checking her belly, and running her hands over her body for any signs of distress. But the more she examined the dog, the more something about her seemed familiar. She had a unique mark on her paw, one Emma had seen before, though it took her a moment to place it. Then it hit her. The dog was the one her boss had been talking about. The very same dog that had been mentioned in hushed conversations in the clinic staff room just days ago. The dog that had been rescued from a puppy mill, abandoned, and left to fend for herself. Emma had heard stories about her from the clinic's owner, Mr. Julian Wright, a wealthy businessman who had a soft spot for animals despite his tough exterior. As Emma's hand gently pressed on the dog's abdomen, she felt a subtle shift. The dog's belly tightened in response to the pressure, and Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had misjudged this entire situation. The dog was in labor soon. Very soon, she would give birth. Please help her. The woman's voice trembled behind her, her eyes pleading. I know she's not a perfect dog, but she's all I have. I don't know what to do if something goes wrong. For the first time in a long while, Emma felt the walls around her heart crumble. She was the last person who should have been touched by a stray dog's plea for help. Yet there she was, standing on the precipice of something she could no longer ignore. I'll help her, Emma said, her voice steady, but filled with an emotion she wasn't used to showing. She turned to the woman, her eyes meeting hers. But you need to understand something. This isn't just any dog. This is a dog that belongs to someone very important to me, and if anything happens to her, I will hold you personally responsible. The woman nodded furiously, overwhelmed with relief. I promise I won't let anything happen to her. As Emma began to prepare for the birth, she realized that sometimes life had a way of throwing curveballs just when she thought she had everything figured out. This was more than just a medical emergency. This was a chance to prove that, despite everything she believed about herself, there was still room for compassion in her heart. Emma moved quickly, her professional instincts taking over. She had seen countless births before, both planned and unplanned. And despite her outward appearance of indifference, she always carried the weight of each life she helped bring into the world. But something about this situation felt different. Maybe it was the dog's calm demeanor, or the desperation in the woman's voice that echoed the fear she herself had felt in moments of helplessness. Or maybe it was the realization that, unbeknownst to the woman, this wasn't just any dog. This was the dog that had been rescued from the heart of a puppy mill, a cruel world that left scars both on the outside and within. The golden retriever wasn't just a stray. She was a symbol of resilience, of survival. And Emma found herself fighting not just for the dog's life, but for the future that was unfolding before her eyes. With her hands steady and her mind focused, Emma guided the woman to sit on a chair beside the table. The dog, whose name was Bella, turned her head to nuzzle the woman's hand, as if offering comfort in return. Emma placed an IV drip into the dog's paw to ensure she wouldn't become dehydrated during the labor. She spoke gently to the woman, giving her instructions on what to do if Bella needed her. The woman nodded, visibly relieved, but still anxious. "Stay close, just in case," Emma murmured. "You'll need to keep her calm, and if anything goes wrong, don't hesitate to call me." Minutes passed in tense silence as the dog's labor began. Bella's breathing grew heavy, her body shifting in small jerks as she braced herself for the birth. Emma's gaze never left her, her hands ready to intervene at any moment, but she was cautious. Sometimes, the first stages of labor were long and uneventful. Bella seemed to be handling the contractions well, though Emma couldn't help but notice how her eyes flicked back to her, as if seeking reassurance. Her heart twisted, and she found herself whispering words of encouragement, things she had never thought she'd say to an animal under her care. "You're doing great, Bella. Just a little longer now." It wasn't long before the first puppy emerged. Emma's hands moved swiftly and with precision, guiding the tiny life into the world. Bella let out a soft, relieved whine as the puppy let out its first cry. The woman gasped, her hand covering her mouth in awe, tears welling up in her eyes. The puppy, a tiny bundle of fur, wriggled weakly, and Emma gently placed it on Bella's belly. The mother immediately began licking it clean, her eyes softening as she gazed down at the tiny creature. Emma felt a lump in her throat. It wasn't the first time she had witnessed the miracle of birth, but every time felt like an overwhelming gift. Life, in its most raw and beautiful form, unfolding right before her. "Look," the woman whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks as she watched Bella nuzzle the puppy. But the birth wasn't over yet. Bella's contractions continued, and another puppy emerged soon after. Then another. Emma worked quickly, her hands moving as if she had done this 1,000 times. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, the responsibility she carried for both the mother and her pups. The woman stood close, her eyes fixed on the puppies as they began to stir and squirm on the table. "They're beautiful," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I can't believe she made it through all of that." Emma nodded, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. "She's a strong girl, and you're doing great too. Just keep her calm." As the last of the puppies was born, Bella let out a final, exhausted sigh. Her body relaxed, and she lay down, panting softly but content. The woman carefully took the tiny pups into her arms, one by one, cradling them gently. Emma watched, feeling a strange warmth in her chest. There was something about witnessing this kind of bond, the unspoken connection between a mother and her offspring, that was both humbling and moving. The love in the woman's eyes as she held the pups mirrored the love Bella showed for them. It was a pure, unconditional love that transcended any boundary. After a moment of quiet, the woman looked up at Emma. I don't know how to thank you. You saved her. You saved them. Emma shook her head, her voice soft. No need for thanks. It's just part of the job. But you should know she's a lucky dog. You're a lucky person too. The woman smiled, her face glowing with the joy of new life. And for the first time in a long while, Emma allowed herself to feel a sense of pride. It wasn't just about being good at her job. It was about the change she had made in someone's life, about the difference she had made in Bella's life. And something within her stirred, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, she had allowed her walls to come down just a little bit. As the woman settled with the puppies in her arms, Emma stepped outside the room to make a few calls. The clinic was buzzing with activity as the morning hours passed, but Emma felt a shift in the air, as if the world outside had slowed down. She picked up the phone and dialed Mr. Julian Wright's number. He was her boss, but he was more than that. He had been a friend and mentor for years. Despite the differences in their personalities, there was an unspoken bond between them, built on mutual respect and a shared love for animals. Emma, Julian's voice crackled through the phone. Everything okay over there? Emma smiled, leaning back against the doorframe. It's more than okay. You were right about Bella. She's just had her pups, 6 healthy ones. They're all doing fine. There was a moment of silence on the other end before Julian spoke again, his tone soft. I'm glad to hear it. I know she's been through a lot, and I trust you to take care of her. Emma's eyes flicked back to the room where the woman was now sitting with Bella and her puppies. She's lucky to have found someone like her, Emma said quietly, but she's also lucky to have you. You've made all the difference in her life, Julian. A chuckle sounded through the phone. Well, I'm glad she found her way into your care. You've always been good with the difficult cases, Emma. You've got a heart for them, even if you try to hide it. Emma's lips quirked into a half smile. I guess so. But let's just say, this one was more than I expected. Julian's voice softened further, and she could almost hear the smile on his face. You've done well. Just remember, sometimes we all need a reminder that it's not just about the work. It's about what we do for each other, both humans and animals. Emma's mind raced, the weight of his words settling in her chest. She had spent years perfecting her skills, focusing on the science and the logic of her work. But today, something had shifted. It wasn't just about treating the animals. It was about the connections she had made, about seeing beyond the surface, about understanding that sometimes the bonds we form with creatures, whether human or animal, were what truly made a difference in the world. I'll remember that, she said, her voice softer now. Thank you, Julian. Anytime, Emma, he replied. I'll be by later to check on Bella and the pups. Keep me posted on how they're doing. As Emma hung up the phone, she stood still for a moment, her eyes drifting toward the examination room. The woman was still sitting there, her arms full of tiny, squirming puppies, but her gaze was locked on Bella. The golden retriever, who had somehow brought them all together. Emma had always believed that animals were capable of amazing things, of healing, of giving, of loving in ways humans could never fully understand. But today, she had witnessed something that she hadn't expected, a reminder that even in the most unlikely situations, compassion could change everything. She had expected to walk through this day with the same cold professionalism she had always maintained. Instead, she had found herself connected to a creature in need of help, and a woman who, for the first time, felt the warmth of hope in her chest. Emma realized that maybe it wasn't just about saving lives, it was about making them better, and she was ready to do more. The day began to fade into evening as the clinic buzzed with the usual routine of animals being brought in for checkups, vaccinations, and emergency treatments. Yet, despite the flurry of activity around her, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something inside her had shifted. She had always been fiercely independent, focused on her work, and wary of allowing herself to feel too much for the animals she treated. But something about Bella's quiet strength, the way she trusted the woman who had adopted her, had cracked through the walls Emma had built around herself. The woman, whose name was Sarah, had been so overwhelmed with joy and gratitude when Bella's pups were born. And Emma had been reminded, once again, of the profound connections animals could create between people. Bella was no longer just a patient to be treated. She was a living being who had been through so much, only to find herself surrounded by love. And now, Emma saw Sarah's devotion to Bella as more than just that of an owner. It was the bond of a family, a bond that had formed out of the deepest, most unexpected of circumstances. As Sarah sat in the corner of the room, cradling the puppies one by one, Emma couldn't help but watch them with a soft smile. She was impressed with how quickly Sarah had bonded with the pups, as if they had always belonged to her. It was a quiet, unspoken connection, a unity between mother, pups, and new adoptive mother that transcended words. Bella had been through so much, having endured a traumatic past, and now she was experiencing the peace and love she had always deserved. Emma sat down beside Sarah and took a deep breath. The clinic had grown quiet as the day wore on, and the last few patients had been taken care of. It was just the two of them now, with the puppies and the exhausted but content mother dog. "You're doing great with them," Emma said, her voice soft as she looked at the puppies in Sarah's arms. "They're lucky to have you." Sarah looked up at Emma, her eyes shining with emotion. "I never expected this, you know. I mean, I knew I wanted to help, but I didn't expect to feel so connected to her, to all of them." Emma nodded. She understood what Sarah was feeling. She had seen it countless times in her career. The bond between humans and animals could be life-changing, especially when it came from a place of healing, of rescue, of second chances. Emma had witnessed it in the eyes of a nervous kitten being adopted for the first time, in the wagging tail of an older dog finally being given a comfortable home. And now, the way Sarah held Bella's puppies so protectively. "They have a lot of love to give," Emma said, "and so do you." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The soft sound of Bella's panting was the only noise filling the room. Emma, however, couldn't help but reflect on her own life, on the walls she had built to protect herself from the pain of losing clients, animals, and sometimes even herself. She had always been able to distance herself from the raw emotions involved in her job. It was easier that way, less personal. But seeing Sarah's genuine devotion to Bella, seeing the way the two of them had formed such an undeniable connection, Emma realized that maybe it wasn't just the animals who needed saving. Maybe, in a way, humans needed the healing power of unconditional love just as much. "You know, I never really thought much about adopting a dog before," Sarah said, breaking the silence. "I always thought I'd be too busy, or I wouldn't have the time for it. But something about Bella's eyes when I saw her at the shelter, it was like she was asking for help. I couldn't say no." Emma smiled gently. "Sometimes animals choose us. They know what they need." Sarah's gaze shifted toward Bella, who was now curled up beside her, licking one of her puppies in an affectionate motion. "I don't think she's ever had someone love her like this before. She's had such a rough start, and now she's finally free. I just want to make sure I'm doing right by her." "You are," Emma reassured her. "You're doing exactly what she needs. Just keep loving her, and she'll do the same for you." Sarah smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I think I already love her more than I can express." Emma's heart warmed at the words. She had seen the effect of love before, how it could heal wounds, both emotional and physical. It wasn't just Bella who had been saved today. In some small way, Sarah had been saved too, and the healing would continue as long as they both had each other. A knock at the door interrupted their moment, and Emma turned to see Julian standing in the doorway. His face was unreadable, as usual, but his eyes softened when he saw the scene in front of him. "How are we doing in here?" he asked, his voice low. Emma nodded, stepping away from Sarah and her new family. "Everything went smoothly. Bella's recovering well, and the pups are healthy." Julian approached Bella, who looked up at him with a mix of curiosity and trust. He crouched beside her, his hand moving gently over her fur. "Good girl," he murmured, clearly satisfied with the outcome. "You did well." Sarah looked at him with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. You're Julian Wright, aren't you?" He smiled faintly. "That's me. I didn't realize you were the one who helped Bella get here. I thought she was just another rescue." Julian stood up and wiped his hands on his pants. "Not just another rescue. Bella's special. She came from a bad place, but she made it out. And now she has a family that loves her." Sarah's eyes misted over again, but this time there was a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I can't thank you enough for what you've done for her, for all of them." Julian met her gaze and nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. "It's not just me. It's the people who care about them. You're doing more than you realize by giving her a home. Emma watched the exchange between the two, and for a moment, she felt the warmth of the moment, a rare moment of true connection, where the work they all did every day made a real difference. It wasn't just about animals or people, but the way lives intertwined in the most unexpected ways. Later that evening, after Bella and her pups had settled in for the night, Sarah took a deep breath as she gazed at them. She had made the right choice. This was her family now, imperfect, yes, but real. Bella's journey had been long and hard, but Sarah had been there when she needed her most. It was a bond that would never be broken. As Emma walked out of the clinic to head home, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just the work she did, it was the lives she touched, and the lives that touched hers in return. And as she looked up at the night sky, Emma realized that sometimes the most unexpected stories were the ones that had the greatest impact.